This is the Energy to Thrive podcast, episode number 017, with my special guest, Dr. Keesha Ewers. All links and resources you hear in this episode can be found by going to jenniferpowder.com/017.
Welcome to the Energy to Thrive podcast with weight loss and fitness expert Jennifer Powder. Join her each week as she delves into the world of health and what it really takes to create true transformation in your life, both physical and emotional. Through her messages and interviews with special guests, you'll be inspired to live healthier, happier, and hotter lives. Here's your host, a woman who's real, totally transparent, and gets to the heart of the matter, Jennifer Powder.
Hi, welcome, and thanks for listening. I am super excited about this interview today because, I guess it was in my 30s that I really began to recognize how important sexual health is for a woman. And especially in the work that I do, I'm often hearing a lot about sexual dissatisfaction and a lack of fulfillment in the bedroom. And I find it super interesting because there are so many messages for women around sex and intimacy, and it is such an easy area to get confused on. And, one of the things I talk about with my clients often is, how are things going in the bedroom? How's your sex life? And often it's not good. And so I wanted to bring in somebody to address why it is so important for a woman to embrace her own sexuality and libido and to recognize it as a vital part of her life and another way to nourish herself. So that leads me to welcoming my guest expert today, Dr. Keesha Ewers. Dr. Keesha is, she's amazing. She's a board certified in functional medicine and holds an advanced certification in Ayurvedic medicine, but she's also got a PhD and is an ARNP and a doctor of psychology and psychotherapist. That means she understands and can explain in such layman's terms about why this is important. What's also interesting for Keesha is she was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, which, according to Western medicine, is actually an incurable disease. And yet she discovered how to reverse autoimmunity using her own Freedom Framework method, which she now uses with her patients and teaches to other health coaches worldwide. So this is going to be one juicy conversation, and I think we should just dive right in. Here we go. Well, I am so excited to have my special guest, Dr. Keesha Ewers. Hello, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me on my podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Jennifer. I'm so excited to talk about this subject. It's one of my favorite subjects.
Oh, me too. And I don't think it's talked about enough, frankly. For some reason, women, we get shy around this, or we just feel like we don't want to bring up the topic of our sex life or how things are going. And yet, I personally believe it's a fundamentally important part of our health. And so I want to start in. So you're many things, and I've just said that, but how and why did you want to become a sexologist? And what is that? Like, not many people know.
I know. It's the best doctorate ever. So, every time I've been in medicine for 30 years and I'm integrative medicine, which means I pull from my Ayurvedic training, my Western training, and then my psychotherapy training, but still, every single time a patient comes into my office that stumps the chump, I go back to school. I'm like, I've got to figure this puzzle out. It's all about the puzzle, and helping them solve it so that they can really live to their optimal being. And so I would have these women come into my office and they would say, you prescribed bioidentical hormones to my friend Teresa, or to my daughter, or to my mother, or to, whatever. And they say that it revolutionized their lives, and I need some of that. And so then I would start asking questions. Well, why do you think you need bioidentical hormones? And they would say, well, my sex drive went off to Tahiti and left me behind, or I have hot flashes, or I have memory loss, or when I have sex, it feels like cut glass in my vagina, and things like that. And so then I would start asking these very simple questions, like, do you like your partner? Or when's the last time you had a libido that you were really happy with? And, because whenever someone's trying to lose weight, we ask that question, when's the last time you weighed something that you were really happy with, right?
Well, and I just want to say that I don't know if that's such a simple question. Do you like your partner?
I know.
Right?
So that's a simple question to say, though. So yes. Do you like your partner? And so I would get tears, and almost every woman that comes into my office cries because I'm always asking questions that they've never been asked before, right? So then I would say, okay, so what's happening for you right now? Well, my partner had an affair, or I lost my job, or she or he lost his job, or we have a special needs child, or one of our kids is addicted to drugs, or, like there are a million different reasons for these tears. And I would say, progesterone and estrogen are not going to help this, right? This is something else. And I started saying that what's in your head goes to your bed. And so what I decided is I needed to look and see in the literature if it supported what I was seeing in my office, which is women's sex drive and libido is actually impacted by what's going on in their head. And that's often stuff that's happened in the past and that they've had a button pushed by their partner. And I couldn't find anything. And so I said, okay, back to school with you. And so I decided to do sexology because it's a study of intimacy, of human relationships. And I thought, you know what, that's exactly, no, as you said, I'm all about trying to have us talk about death and sex and religion and politics at the dinner table, bring all of these subjects out and have these really great conversations that help edify us, that we can learn from.
Yeah.
So,
and it's not make it taboo, or not make it awkward, or not make it this weird thing. And, my kids are 8 and 10, and I talk about, I have talked about, cause my little guy is he went into health ed, sex ed in school. Yeah. And I'm like, this will be dinner conversation. Yeah. I don't want that culture of silence to be something that my son and my daughter grew up with.
That's really good. You're doing that.
Oh, good. Well, where their peers become the trusted resource. I don't want that.
No, you don't want that. And you don't want the internet to be the resource either.
No.
So as a sexologist, when I became a doctor of sexology, I became the resident expert on sex, in my kids' minds. And I have a whole library of books about, sex for kids, teenagers, and adults. And so when their friends would come over, they would see I have this little vulva puppet, and it sits next to the sex books on the bookshelf, and it's the anatomy, and it's this really, really beautiful little puppet. And you could see when their friends were over, they go, "Is that?" my kids would go, "It is. That's my mom's vulva puppet," and then so they would start asking me questions, their friends. Yeah. And so soon I had all these people over at my house that were teenagers that would be over, and they would say, "Where's your mom?" And luckily my kids love me. So they were like, "Oh, well, I'll get her," and we would sit and have these amazing conversations, and they would ask the most intelligent questions that had to do with relationship. Yeah. Because the thing about sex is, if you're not communicating well, you have really bad sex. Sex is about fantastic communication.
Yeah. I think that'll be like a tweetable. If you are having bad communication, you're going to have bad sex. And
exactly. So because women so often don't want to say what they want because they don't know what they want. They want their partners to read their minds, and they get super resentful when their partner doesn't do the things they want, like pick up the socks off the floor, or do the dishes, or notice that the kids need help with their homework and without being told, those kinds of things. And women store that stuff up inside. And then what they make it up about is that, oh, he doesn't love me. If he loved me, he would do these things that make me feel loved. And then I would want to have sex with him.
And that's the whole give and get. I was saying a lot of my clients feel like they give sex to their partner, and it's not actually something that they're getting. They don't view it as a way to nourish their own self.
So I have a whole new way of talking about that.
Yeah. Which is so important. So how is it, why? I mean, I think it's going to be a dumb question, but it's such an obvious question. It's important for women to have good quality, frequent sex, but how so? I mean, I don't have the data or research, but I intuitively know that is, it's a fundamental or vital part of feeling healthy, totally healthy, emotionally, physically.
Says the woman that's 3 weeks into her marriage. So let me go back to the people that have been married for 25 years to the same person. And there's a lot of scorekeeping that's happened in that period of time. Yeah. And so then it's called high desire, low desire partner. And what happens is we feel loved in different ways. And so if we think that we're giving too much and we're not getting enough in the ways that we want, then we'll tend to withhold the thing that our partner wants the most. Now, it's not always the man that is the high desire partner in a relationship, especially in a same-sex relationship. It's going to be whoever has the highest desire. And that person is really under the power of the low desire partner. So for example, the low desire partner says how often you're having sex, what position you're going to be in, if the lights are on or off, how long it's going to happen, and the high desire partner has to just be grateful for exactly what they're getting. And the low desire partner doesn't want that. They resent it. They actually just want to be left alone because they're exhausted at the end of the day. They don't want to be in the power position. And so what happens is oftentimes, because of this lack of communication about talking about this and what our needs really are and not feeling listened to, women will start to shut down and withhold. And there's a study that says that 69%, now I want you to really hear that.
Holy.
69%, okay, of women. This is more than half, okay, of women in a long-term committed relationship of over a year, actually, no longer will have spontaneous sexual desire. Now that means it's more normal than not to not have spontaneous sexual desire. So what does that mean? So Masters and Johnson back in the 1950s and 60s came up with a sexual desire and arousal scale. And what they said is, first we have desire, then we have arousal, then we have ejaculation or orgasm, and then we have the refractory period where we rest. And we've got that mapped out, what the brain does, what the body does, and they did a really good job of figuring all that physiological part out. But guess what? That's how males are. Females, right, have a whole different way of doing sex. Meet my dog, Sophie.
I see that.
And so we have a circular model instead of a linear model. And there are a whole bunch of different reasons that we engage intimately with our partner. And it's not always about pleasure. Oftentimes women deny themselves pleasure if they don't have their to-do list done, or if they don't feel worthy and deserving, or if they feel overweight, or if they feel like the kids are in the next room. They're not allowed to have pleasure in their own minds, right?
Yeah, it's a rule in their head, right?
It is a rule in their head. What's in your head goes to your bed. Okay?
Yes.
All right. So that's a Dr. Keesha-ism. So
love it.
So when you think about it in that way, then you say, oh, if I like my partner, okay, the answer to that question that I asked, yes, I love my partner, and then you say, oh, have I enjoyed sex with my partner in the past? Yeah, I like how I feel afterwards, and it really helps our relationship, and I can feel all that oxytocin that we've gotten from being intimate together, and I can feel, and I'm going to go through all the benefits here in a second. Yeah. I can feel those benefits. Well, then you can say, okay, I can have a willingness to be aroused before I have desire. And that's the key. And that's where Nike got it right. It's just do it. And when I say that, just do it, okay, I don't mean if you're in an abusive relationship.
No, I understand.
Yeah. I mean, if you like your partner and you want your relationship to thrive, and you know that your partner will sizzle in your direction a little bit more and actually give you exactly what you've been holding out for, if they feel satisfied and secure inside the relationship too, then you can say, okay, I'm willing to go here. And then, oh, I can get aroused, and then there's the desire I've been waiting for. Don't wait to be in the mood. So what I do is
don't wait to be in the mood.
Don't wait to be in the mood.
Another good one.
Because you won't be. If you've got kids, you're never in the mood. I mean, it's like, I have to be in Hawaii. Well, how often does that happen, right?
Yeah, once every 5 years.
Exactly.
That's advice I got post kids was from a girlfriend of mine who she, like, when we talked about all this stuff, and she's like, always just make it a rule to give yourself 10 minutes. 10 minutes, even when you don't feel like it, just 10 minutes. And she's like, eventually you'll want to.
Right. And it doesn't have to be swinging from the chandeliers sex all the time. And you, guess what? Don't have to have an orgasm every time you're intimate with your partner. And guess what? If your partner is a male, he doesn't either. That's the whole study of Tantra, which everyone thinks Tantra is about sex, and it's not. It's actually a whole different practice. But the breathing and the meditation practices that are in Tantra make your sex life more alive. And so the Westerners brought it back to the United States and said, oh, this is all about sex. But at the end of the day, it's about energy. And, that's really what is our biggest barrier to engaging intimately with our partner is our lack of energy.
Yeah, exhaustion.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So what you're up against here is a lose-lose situation until you start reframing that and saying, okay, actually, if I don't have to have an orgasm and I don't have an expectation of what sex is going to look like for me or feel like, I just want to be with my partner, then it actually makes it okay if your partner has erectile dysfunction, or if there's something going on mechanically for one or the other of you. There's so many ways of engaging. It's not about penis and vagina. That's one way of having sex, right?
I have a friend of mine. She's got to be 70 or 72. Mm-hmm. And she's become a mentor. And I was having some sort of breakdown in my life at one point. And this isn't that long ago. This is, I think, before I moved in June. And so I was over at her house, and she shared with me that her husband had testicular cancer. Mm-hmm. And so she's like, I haven't had a penis in me for 7 years. But she said, you know what? There's a lot of ways to love. And it was matter of fact and direct. And I was like, I just love this conversation right now. Yeah. It was so good. Okay, I've got a question for you, though. And it goes back to sort of the unworthiness piece or lack of confidence piece. And again, so a lot of my clients come carrying a lot of extra weight that over a course of 10 or 15 years has really taken a toll on their self-concept, their confidence, their ability to perceive their own self as sexy.
Right.
And so they're holding themselves back in their relationship.
You mean they don't look like the cover of the Cosmopolitan magazine and therefore they're not desirable?
Yeah.
See, that's a myth that we have in our culture. And so that's the whole thing. And usually, now sometimes it is true that partners will say, and women and men do this in my office, where they'll say, I don't really find my partner attractive anymore, and sometimes it is about weight, but usually it's not. Yeah. Usually it's a combination of weight plus what's really bugging them, right?
Yeah, what's going on inside, right?
Yeah, because usually two people that are good in the relationship, it's not about what your body looks like, right? You're meeting on a soul level. Sex is sacred. It's actually soul connection. And so if you get so hung up on your body, then you're actually missing the boat entirely about what intimacy can mean for you. What do you say when you have an orgasm? Oh God, right? This is the place where you meet the divine creation of the creative spark of the universe. This is what creates babies. This is the ultimate creative energy, and it's the union of the masculine and the feminine if you're in a heterosexual relationship. Right. If you're in the same sex, then usually there's someone carrying that masculine and feminine energy inside your relationship. Right. So it's the balancing of polarities. It's not about what your body looks like, right? The boat is just missed on that. So I want to talk about this a little bit because
because I want to keep going.
The Adverse Childhood Experiences study was done between 1995 and 1997 by the Centers for Disease Control and also Kaiser Permanente. And Kaiser Permanente was running a weight loss program. They had clinics in the early 90s and late 80s. And this program was really successful in helping people lose weight. But what one of the study coordinators was seeing is that a lot of women were dropping out before they got to goal. They were self-sabotaging, they were leaving the program, and they were kind of head scratching saying, gosh, it's working for them. Why are they dropping out? So they started interviewing these people that had dropped out, and they found out that they'd been sexually abused, all of them. Yeah. So this was an interesting wrinkle. And so they said, gosh, and they combined with the Centers for Disease Control and did a larger study and started asking, do adverse childhood events impact your adult life? And indeed, over 17,000 people were interviewed, and over 2/3 of those reported at least one ACE score. Now, what I mean by that is some form of abuse or neglect. Okay, you could call it capital T trauma. It can be sexual abuse, domestic violence, witnessing your mother get beaten. It can be verbal abuse. It can also be divorce or abandonment, feeling abandoned, a parent incarcerated or addicted to something, so that, there's neglect, right? It's a very limited study. It's only 10 different things. They actually didn't say the loss of your pet or your grandmother or death, like all those things that actually there are a ton of them. When we start talking about adverse childhood events, I'm talking now about, because what my study showed, which was called the Healing Unresolved Trauma Study, it showed that women that had not healed, trauma in the past, I call it hurt, healing unresolved trauma, had hurts from the past. It impacted their libido in adulthood. Yeah. So, we have 2 studies now that indicate that this is profoundly important to think about. So now what we have, the hurt model says, you have this hurt in your childhood, you get a feeling in your body from it, whatever it is. It could be that you couldn't get to the top of the rope in the presidential challenge in PE in front of everybody, or that you failed the test, or you didn't get picked for the baseball team. So it can be any of those things. And then you're going to feel something in your body like shame or anxiety or worthlessness or all of those things that kids feel. And you're going to make up a belief about it. I have to be perfect to be loved was mine. I was sexually abused at the age of 10 by my vice principal. And so I would sit in my classroom and the intercom would go off. And I would think, because my vice principal was telling me it was because I misbehaved, that I have to be perfect.
Oh my God.
It was a mind fuck, because I was perfect in class. I was so scared to go to school during that year. My parents we were in the military. So it was 1 year that I was there. And so what I came away from childhood with at the age of 10 is something that, my adult brain says, well, of course, that's not accurate. But my child self doesn't have a fully developed brain until I'm 26 years old. Yeah. So kids make stuff up. And so what you do is you say, oh, what are those beliefs that you're carrying to bed with you now? Because they're being hit, they're buttons, right? And so you'll go into that fight or flight, and there's no way, because if a zebra is being chased by a lion and it thinks it's about to get eaten, that zebra knows it's not safe to stop and reproduce. So all your hormones indeed do go south. They go towards survival. They don't go towards reproduction. So your libido is gone. So when a woman comes in and says, I need hormones, usually it's true that I don't look at just that. I look at the why, because I can give you bioidentical hormones, but I don't want to give them to you forever. It is a cancer risk. Right. So what I like to do is say, let's fix the hole in the bottom of your boat so that your hormones aren't leaking out as fast as I'm giving them to you. We have to figure out what's setting off your whole hormone system.
And so deconstructing those limiting beliefs then through therapy.
Exactly. Right? And I have a whole program that helps people do that. It's like a do-it-yourself therapy.
About that. That's good. What about when you want to have sex, but you don't want to have sex with your partner?
Well, so that's another thing. You know that something's broken in your relationship and you need to fix it. So, this is the thing. A lot of times women will say, oh, I'm just too exhausted, or I don't want to have sex with my partner. I think he's an asshole, whatever it is. That's actually a warning sign that you need to do something. And if you feel like it's, you have to have a partner that's willing to go there with you, that's willing to do the work to make your relationship up leveled. And if you don't have a partner that can do that can grow with you, well, maybe it's time to move on to another partner. But are you doing everything that you can? And when you start thinking about that, meet my husband. When you start thinking about it that way, you remember that wherever you go, there you are. And so
you can't escape yourself, can you?
You can't. And you'll just attract the same thing to you. So you've got to deal with what's going on inside of your head. And so sex is an escape mechanism for a lot of people, just like binge watching Netflix or shopping or porn or gambling or drugs or alcohol or food is. It's a numbing out technique. And so if you're using sex in that way, and that means I want to have sex with someone else instead of my partner, then that's a numbing out technique. It means I want to go escape from all of this.
Escape my reality.
Exactly. Have pleasure so that I can actually have something in my life that's good. That will be the message in your head.
So it takes, how do you get women then? Because it takes a lot of courage to face a lot of this stuff. Right? It takes a lot of courage to admit it, say it, vocalize it. Like I'm
Yeah.
always like, you got to name it. You got to name it to know. If it just stays in your head,
Right.
it kind of keeps the crazy circling and you stay stuck in your core patterns. And so I think that's the benefit of reaching out to get help in any aspect of your life, whether it's, my clients come for weight loss, but there's always so much more.
Right.
Your clients might come for bioidentical hormone, or your patients, but it's so much more. So,
right.
How, I guess, where do you get the where do you get the courage to admit it? Right? Like,
this is the problem with human nature. And I wrote a book called Solving the Autoimmune Puzzle because, this is low libido is actually what I call indicator light on the dashboard of your car. If your libido is low, it says your gas tank is empty for desire. Desire doesn't just mean sex. Desire is a Latin word that means from the stars. So it means if you don't have desire for sex, you're likely blocked somewhere that's keeping you from having desire for everything you're passionate about. Yeah. How you show up in bed is how you show up with money. It's the same energy. How you show up for other things in your life. And so that's what you want to get. Is if I'm repressed somewhere, then it's going to show up in several places. If I have a problem with my weight, I have a problem in my head, not with my body, and it's going to show up in a zillion different places. Right. And so, when you start thinking about it in that way, the thing I wrote in my book, Solving the Autoimmune Puzzle, is what I call the misery to motivation ratio. And I wish it weren't true, but it was true for me. I had to get rheumatoid arthritis. I was so classic with the ACE study. It took me 20 years, which it takes 10 to 30 years to develop an autoimmune disease usually. I was abused at 10. At 20, a year later, at 30 years old, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that's incurable by Western standards. And I was an Energizer bunny one day, and then I was laid out flat with no energy, swollen joints, and intense pain the next day. Was this all of a sudden the way I thought it was? Absolutely not. I'd gotten warning signs all along the way for 20 years, but I didn't know how to read them. Yeah. So in my book, I talk about this, and I have a graphic that I created that I just love. It's an illustration of a dog chasing its tail. And that's what you were just talking about, where if you've got this mental hamster on the wheel thing, right? Yes. The dog chasing its tail. That's, to me, the mind chasing its tail. And I have a brain chasing the spinal cord around and around and around. So it's the mind chasing its TALE, the same way a dog chases its TAIL, right?
And so the stories we're making
exactly. And so the mind that creates the problem usually can't solve it. And that's where we get into trouble. So when you've created the problem yourself, and then you're looking for the solution within you, sometimes it's hard to get there because you're in that fight or flight place when you're starting to start thinking about it, and you're in child space. Right. So that's why I call borrowing a brain is a really good idea. So there's a stigma about therapy. A lot of people won't do it. And every therapist is not a good therapist, and every modality of therapy is not good. Talk therapy does not work. All you have an opportunity to do is just bitch about your problems and have someone validate you. Well, you can do that with your girlfriends. Yeah. Don't go to therapy and just talk. So you need to have your feet held to the fire, and you need to do trauma release therapy. And that's what this program I have, You Unbroken, it talks about this, and it actually gives you the tools for trauma release. You need to do that because that actually goes fast. It makes it happen faster, and it tells you how to find a good therapist if you get stuck. I show you ways, like if you can't do this, that means you need to go borrow a brain. And this is the kind of brain you need to go find. You need to find someone that's really good at EMDR or brain spotting or clinical hypnotherapy, trauma release modalities, not talking. You can do that for 20 years and get nowhere. Research actually shows that.
I believe it. And I also think that when you, having been in therapy for a number of different things, what I find is what you talk about is what you bring about, and it's the energy that grows. And so, right? So if you're putting this energy for an hour, I've had even 2-hour sessions where I think they're ridiculous, where you leave with this cloud over your head and everything's been re-triggered, everything.
Right.
And then now you have to almost calm your nervous system back down again. And then
that's exactly what you're trying to do.
Yeah. And you're doing it on your own. And then you go home to a family or to a partner. And, so that's really interesting. Okay. We'll have to put some of that. So we're going to put all of these ideas into show notes, but I also want to make sure we get access to your resource. So, okay. So I'm looking at when you I guess what's the first step, right? So if a client is listening and they've got either childhood trauma or have gone through, having children, feeling low libido, not feeling super desirable, may or may not have a willing partner. Like a lot of times men can just start to shut down, right? They'll start to shut down in the relationship because they've tried, and rejection takes a huge toll on a man. Right. And, I've heard from them too, like, well, I've initiated over and over, and there's only so many times that you're told no before you stop trying.
Right. And when I do therapy with couples, I do a lot of therapy for this, and I'll have the woman come in and then I'll say, okay, so let's get your husband in here too, because I can't do sex therapy for one. I mean, that's really, it's a system. You're a couple. And so it's not just about, sometimes the husband will say, you're frigid, you need to go get help. And so that's super helpful, by the way, to say that to somebody. Super helpful. So I have him come in too, so I can tell him that, and then go delve into what's been going on with the communication style. And then I have a whole program I do with them. And I do this for people, and I see the same patterns show themselves over and over and over again, which is why I wrote these programs. So first step is really to look at your relationship and the language that you're using inside your head about your partner and about yourself. Yeah. Really, this is what I say is watch your language. And I don't care if you say shit, damn, and hell. I'm talking about how are you speaking to yourself and how are you thinking about your partner and how much negativity is showing up around there. Because John Gottman, one of the best marriage therapists, most famous one anyway, actually talks about this as if you are not doing, 85% of meeting somebody's bid in the relationship. In other words, meeting them with a yes instead of a no, then you have a really high probability of being divorced. And so that's a really important concept, is that you're saying yes as often as you can. And I was parented by a mom that said no as the first thing every single time. And so I remember thinking when as a child and a teenager that when I have children, I'm going to say yes as often as I can so that the no actually has some reasoning behind it. And that is how I raised my 4 kids. And we have this amazing relationship. They didn't rebel. And we talk about everything, including sex around the dinner table. Yeah. And it's because I did make that rule and I expressed that was my rule. I said, I'm going to say yes as often as I can. And when I say no, there's a reason for it. We will have a discussion. It won't be because I said so. And so that's how I do my marriage too. As often as I can, I say yes. Yeah. And so the way, with sex, what it is for women, the thing I'm looping back around from earlier, you have to take your vagina to the gym. So often when people are talking about, I've been struggling with my weight my whole life, or, they're not friends with their bodies. And when they finally do kind of crack that weight loss code and they start getting to be friends with their body and collaborating with it, it includes some movement of some sort. So they're either going to the gym or they're going hiking or they're doing yoga or they're dancing, whatever it is that brings them joy, jumping on a trampoline. And you have to do that for your vagina too. Guess what, ladies? It's a muscle. Yeah. And if you have done any kind of workout, that if you want to build a bicep muscle, that you have to put a weight in your hand. You can't just go like this and expect it to build. Yeah. And it's the same thing with your vagina. You can't just do Kegels. You can't just sit there and contract. It'll be like this. You have to put weights in there. And so
that's like the jade egg. Are you going to talk about like the jade egg?
No, I actually am not a huge fan of the jade egg because
ask about that.
I really like an invention. I have no financial thing in this. I love this guy created this for his grandmother, and I just love that story. Oh. And it's for stress urinary incontinence is why he had created it, right? So that's why I say take your vagina to the gym, because there will be some point when you are jumping on the trampoline with your child or your grandchild. This happened to me in my 30s. I was jumping on the trampoline. I had 4 vaginal births, and I started becoming incontinent, and I lost a little urine, and I went, no way! I'm only in my 30s. This is not happening. And so I started doing research, and I found this thing called the Kegel Master, which you can get on Amazon, and you don't need all the bells and whistles of all the things that are out there. You just need, it's like a speculum, what you get your pap smears with, but it has springs in it. So there's resistance training. So a jade egg, you actually can't change it.
Exactly, because it's hard, right?
Yes.
You can't squeeze against it and it can't contract back.
Exactly. So what we're doing with the Kegel Master is you're actually making the duckbills come together. And within 2 weeks, I had gotten that thing cleared up. Now, I remind you, I was only in my 30s, so it didn't take much. But that's happened a couple more times. I'm 52 now. And every time I pull out my Kegel Master, it's been because I've been away from my spouse for a long time for some reason or another. And I haven't been able to have my daily sex because we have it at least once a day, sometimes twice. And that's the same as me getting up and going and exercising every morning. You've got to do that. And so you have to do that for your vagina too. So if you do have a partner that has a penis that works, or you have a same-sex partner, then you need to play with your sex toys and you need to squeeze around that, because you have rings in your vagina that you can actually isolate and make it so much fun and make it strong. So your vagina needs to be strong.
So let's just go back to the frequency bit right there, because I'm sure there's women listening right now who are like, sweet mother of God, what is saying? And I am a newlywed, but that has been a pattern. Like, you know, we had a long distance relationship for quite some time, but it's the same. We have sex almost daily. And it's like, it's connecting, it's grounding, it's soothing, it's passion. We use it for so many different reasons beyond just to like get off, you know?
Exactly.
Like it's a deeper thing. But I've also heard that like sex can be a habit. You have to like, the more you want it, or the more you do it, the more you want it. The less you do it, the less you want it.
That's exactly right.
Are true. So how do
It's just like exercise. It is the exact same thing.
You gotta work yourself up to go, and then once you go, you feel so good.
Right. If you set your alarm, you know, a half an hour before, and so it's never like 10 minutes is enough. You just connect, right? And we're tantrikas. And so my husband he maybe ejaculates once every 6 months. Wow. And he's 65 years old, has no medications. And we've been practicing this for all of our marriage. And, you know, he has great control. And what that does is, and I help with that, obviously. He wouldn't have great control unless I were on board with us. But what it does is it keeps that energy circulating so that his muscle works really well. So it's not always getting emptied out. So, you know,
this is back to some Ayurvedic medicine too, right?
Yes. Yeah, for energy release. Yeah.
I see an acupuncturist in Calgary, and he said he actually tells men frequently to stop masturbating, to stop watching porn.
Exactly.
To like actually keep that, I'm pointing down here, to keep that in, because it helps.
The ojas is what it's called in Ayurveda. It's your life force.
And
so, And so, you know, we have these expectations in Western culture about what sex is supposed to look like. And actually, and it's from what Masters and Johnson's told us in their research, right? But it's not accurate. And so Eastern philosophy has a whole different way, and that's a whole nother show and another conversation entirely. But my point is that you can pencil this in the same as you do, you know, set your alarm for anything else. So you really want to just say, okay, this is actually the thing that I do to exercise my vagina and to exercise my relationship, to take it out for a walk and make sure that it gets healthy. Because a healthy relationship is this, you know, this is part of it.
And so I think that needs to be driven home again. Because again, like my whole premise is we want to live with energy to thrive, right? Like that's where I come from. I don't want to just survive in my life or my career or my weight or my health or my, so maybe just share again, like when you start to recognize that sex is a way to actually nourish your own self, when you go from having an unhealthy or how do I ask this? It's sort of like, what are the benefits? Like if you can take yourself and fast forward 6 months and go from having a sexless relationship with bad communication to not feeling good to maybe much more connection, like what are the benefits you see with your patients who start to focus on this and change, not just talk about it, but actually do the work and change? What happens for them?
Well, it's the same as just talking about weight loss, right? You see nothing. And so then when you actually do it, then you see all kinds of things. And so with oxytocin, we wind up having our hormones balanced better. As long as, so for the woman, I'm going to loop back to the beginning when I said sometimes women come in and say, whenever I have intercourse, it feels like I have cut glass in my vagina, then that is actually a need for hormones. And don't have sex as long as that's happening, because what happens is the body says, oh my gosh, that hurts. And so then you'll clamp down and you'll hurt more. And so you need to get that taken care of. If you've had a fantastic sex life, you love your partner, and all of a sudden it hurts, then that is indeed right? That hormonal piece. And I give intravaginal estriol for that. And that works like a charm. Now,
but is that when you're like premenopause, during menopause?
Yes,
or
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. But I do hormone testing. I won't just give that because, again, breast cancer risk if you're estrogen dominant. So you want to make sure that somebody that's following you is a functional medicine doctor and does the right kind of testing to look at your adrenal glands and your hormones before just handing you something. You do not ever want to take hormones based on blood work. Please don't do that, because that's like what's in your refrigerator. So if Jennifer came into your fridge and said, oh, you've got salmon and you've got blueberries and you've got cauliflower and you're doing great. Oh, I can see you're going to lose a ton of weight. And then 4 days later goes and looks in your trash can and sees rotten salmon and moldy blueberries and brown cauliflower because you ran out of time to actually cook it and it got tossed out. This has happened to me. Then that was an inaccurate look at what you were actually eating.
Right.
And that's what blood work is. It looks at what's in the fridge. It's bioavailable. Okay.
Right.
So when we look in your trash can and in your fridge, we can tell, do we need to go grocery shopping and get you something? Or do we need to teach you how to cook and help you with time management? And that's the same, when we start talking about lab testing. So that's my little soapbox. Please don't take synthetic hormones and don't take them based on blood work, and make sure you have some testing done before you ever take them, because it's dangerous if you don't. So, at the end of the day, what we're looking at is we're saying, okay, there is this component where if you hurt when you have sex, now that can happen when you're 20 because of sexual abuse. Yeah. And, your vagina has learned to clamp down. And so then that requires a whole nother kind of therapy, right? And that's really important. And I work on that too in my practice. So, there are all kinds of reasons for this to happen. And I have a whole program called the Libido Cure. It's a 7-module program online because there are so many. There are 5 different root causes for low libido. When we talk about low libido, we can talk about it as innate, which means you never had it. And oftentimes that's from past hurt. And we can call the other kind acquired, which means you had it at one point and now it's gone. So you have to kind of look at, it's not an easy answer. You have to say, okay, I used to have a great sex life with this partner that I really adore. So, and now I don't. So now what we're doing is we're looking at the relationship and we're communicating. Sit down and have the conversation. I really miss you. Yeah. I have a marital love affair. 3 module Zoom teleconference that I did with Dr. Keith Witt, which was so much fun. And it's on my website on drkeesha.com. And we do a lot of role playing of these conversations because I discovered I would have women come into my office and they would say, yeah, we really haven't had sex for about 7 years. And I'd say, well, what does your partner say about that? Well, I don't know. We haven't talked about it. What?
I know. It's crazy.
It just disappears and you don't talk about it. And at this point, it's just awkward, and that's always what people say. Well, at this point, we don't even know, it's just awkward.
How do I bring it up?
Yeah. How do I bring it up? What do we do? We don't even know how to do anything anymore. And so that marital love affair course is for, all the people that were in it were over 55 and they had kind of gotten into that space where somebody had stopped having sex for some reason or another, whether it was the guy having some, 1 time penis didn't get erect, 2 times, oh my gosh, something's wrong, 3 times, I'm embarrassed and now I'm out. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. And I am absolutely not going to address this head on, and I'm not going to a doctor about it. That's a fairly typical male response to that. And the sad thing about that is just like you have to take your vagina to the gym, because if you don't use it, you lose it. It collapses on itself. Yeah. Men, if they don't use their penis, it stops working. And so you've got to use it, which is why I have my 65-year-old husband having sex every day. I mean, it's just like, that's going to happen because I don't want him to lose it. So that's going to be a combination combination for men of a circulatory issue, maybe a medication, maybe alcohol, maybe food, or there are a couple of psychological things too, where, oh, I'm afraid that I'm never going to be able to get it up again because 3 times it has failed. So now I'm afraid. Well, whenever they have performance anxiety, it doesn't work.
Right.
And so, that's those conversations then need to be safe. They need to be in a space where you can feel like you can express yourselves. And sometimes you need some help with somebody to mediate those. And I do that all the time for my patients, even on Zoom. I'll sit and I'll help them with that, because ignoring it doesn't make it go away.
No.
You can't be an ostrich when it comes to sex or anything else.
No, it gets bigger. It gets bigger. And then you do more to numb the pain of not moving through it. At least that's my experience.
Right.
I could talk to you forever right now. Like I really could. So I want to just say thank you. And I want to make sure that people know how to find you and the resources that you're talking about, because there's one course that I want to do, is the release of trauma. Like I think that at some point we all have to recognize that trauma has occurred in our life, and trauma can stay in your body and it can stay activated until you figure out the right way to let it go. And if you've been doing therapy or an unsuccessful therapy, then it's kind of like spinning your wheels.
Well, it's not a matter of it can, it will, I mean, it is playing a part in your life. And you have to just get it out from the closet in the shadows where it's doing its subconscious thing or unconscious, and bring it out where you can see it. Right. Yeah. And you can start working with it and go, oh, that's happening right now. Oh, I see that. And so then you have tools that you can work with it. So.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Okay. So tell us where to go. So I know I've got so to get your 21-day quick start guide, I'll have all of this on the show links for anybody listening. People would go to, so that's to help you get balanced hormones, healthy digestion, sizzling libido, and boundless vitality. Who doesn't want that? So you would go to www.drkeesha.com/quick start. Is that the best place for people to start finding resources?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that quick start guide will drop 21 days of different things into your email that are tips for getting going. And a lot of it is, I never even realized I need to think about that, and so it's a quick start guide. And then drkeesha.com, drkeesha.com is under programs. You can see all the programs I've been talking about.
Oh, that's so awesome. Thank you so much for meeting and for sharing all of this. I think it's a conversation that needs to happen and be shared far more frequently than it does. And I hope to have you back again because I've got more questions.
Oh, it was so much fun. Thank you, Jennifer, for having me on and giving me the opportunity. This is what, helping women live their highest potential is my mission, and taking them from victim to vital. That's the thing I want. There are no victims. And I'm just going to end with, I am not a victim of my sexual abuse or a body that betrayed me with autoimmune disease. They are the best things that ever happened to me, because they made me have to sit and look at this stuff and up level what was going on for my consciousness. So my whole purpose on this earth, I realized, actually came from these events. They were fantastic things to happen to me, because I'm now living my life purpose, because I was forced to heal from them, figure out a way to do that, and then turn around and help other women. So nobody's a victim unless they allow it in adulthood. Yeah. Children obviously are powerless and they are victimized all the time, unfortunately. But as an adult, if you're listening to me, you're not a victim. So it's time to move out of that mentality.
So thank you. I think, and even just the power and the strength of your conviction, right? Like that's such a perspective shift, because so many people stay stuck in victimhood.
I know.
And it can stay there for decades. And I've been there, or even my response to stress can sometimes go to more victim than empowered. And I have to remember and look at myself and do the work to get out of that.
Right.
Thank you. It's if you're listening and have enjoyed this podcast, please share it. Please share the conversation. You don't have to tag your friends because that might be identifying, but please share it on social media. Subscribe to the podcast Energy to Thrive on iTunes and give a review. This has been one of my most favorite interviews to date so far, and I believe that every woman needs to hear this conversation and then share it. So thanks everybody for tuning into this episode. We'll be back again next week with another interview for you. That's all for now. Bye, everybody.